Welcome everybody. We're going to take a look at Power Query today. We're just going to use the sample data, so we'll load that in, and it's going to give us immediately. It's going to open up Power Query. It's the same as getting get data over here. I'll go over that a little bit. We're going to just choose load to kind of show you it loading in. And when that data loads in, it will load all that financials test data that Power BI has, all 700 rows. So it's just like the test data. But like if we did the same, we did Excel book and we choose just one of those things, that would be something that would bring that in and we could utilize that. So we got that data in there. So over here, if we click transform data, we can see all that Power Query just sitting there nice and pretty. One of the nice things about Power Query is we can do a lot of things we can't do with standard Excel. We can do a lot of things we can't do with standard BI, Power BI. So Power Query is very similar to, say, a Python language, but it's more visual. So we have all the things you could probably want to do in Python. That's kind of challenging to do in Python, yet you can do it right here, just like clicking stuff. So for instance, maybe I just want certain columns. I want to clean up my data. I want this, I want that, I got that. And I just want to say remove other columns. I got my columns. But maybe I want to say, well, I want to like kind of figure out a way to quickly write an if else statement. So what we could do here, we can go to add, and this is the first thing I want to show you that's pretty amazing about Power Query. So we go over here and we say from selection and say I want to group this data in a certain way. So let's say if the sales price is, let's go over here. Let's say if it's mid-market and government, it'll start figuring out patterns, right? So let's say if the countries are France and Mexico, um, we can just shorten those real quick by having that pattern. So watch this. So I hit can, and I'll say GER. It'll eventually pick up on this pattern of a shortened word. We could not find transform logic. Well, maybe this thing's not working, but we'll get there maybe. I actually have the wrong column, so that's the reason why. So if I go over here, it should immediately figure out that logic. So there you got it. It pulls out those first words, and I'm really happy with those results. So you got your first characters, and then up here in Power Query, you can type in um, country, country, 3 digits or something not great, but something that you could take a look at there. So you got the 3 digits there, and then you got your segment, you got your country, you got your product, and we got what we need here. So there's other things we can do. We can also, do some analysis on these columns. We can do transform. Maybe we don't need to bring all the data. We could round up real quick to get rid of those additional decimals on the units sold. And then that way we don't have to do that in Power Query or do anything crazy there. You see there's other things like text transformation. So if we right click here, we could do some transform logic. Maybe we want to make these country digits in all uppercase. That's a big thing that does come up a lot. So we can just throw it into uppercase, and it looks a little bit more what you would see in the real world when it comes to data. So then we have this, we have the other things we can do like the upper, lower, and things like that. So trim, capitalize each word, lowercase. Maybe you just want to clean. Maybe you think there's some extra space on the sides. You can clean that and make sure you don't have any extra spaces. So we could go over here. We could clean all our data at once. How powerful is that? That would take a lot in SQL, take a lot in a lot of other language. Come over here, similar to pandas maybe, you could argue. You can do some additional things right here. And then I think like the idea of just cleaning your data is really good. So it lets you create these things called star schemas. So think of this as like a fact table. You got your information here. Not a great fact table, but it does resemble that. And if we were to have duplicated that, you notice how Power Query has these steps. I can go back to the steps. I keep all those steps, right? And we go back over here. We remove those other columns. Maybe we just want the date columns, for example, and we have that date column. We can create a date table all by itself, and we could say let's remove the other columns, and now we have a date table very quickly coming from that. That's helpful, right? Like you're not going to have any issues, and then we don't want that one, so we'll just remove it real quick. So we can go over here, right click it, remove that one because we don't need it because it's not really truly a date table. So those are all the dates. Then we can rename it dates, and we have a date table. So these are just quick things that you can do, and it's repeatable because it always has those steps. That's the power of Power Queries. You always have these steps that can really help you out and make it really easy. So now we have a date table, a financials table. We're kind of cleaning up that one source to be a little bit easier for analytics, which is kind of the goal, right? So if we got what we need here, and then now we can actually bring, let's go back up here. Let's say, oh, I want to bring still like the solid data in, the date we really need, right? We can't live without. So we could bring that data in so we have it in this table. And what's it going to do? Well, we can load it. So we can click enable load, but we don't need to load this necessarily, but we can now filter off that date table. So I'm going to go over joins and how they work, but let's say we just want certain dates. So in this data set, we have, 2013. I can go over here, just select 2013, and there I have the dates I needed. I actually selected 2014, so I'll go back and choose 2013. We have our dates. So I could go back here, and then I could join on this table, say I just want those dates for 2013. It's in the date table, because maybe it's a dynamic date table and it sorts upon what we actually need. So you're not having a ton of data there. You can click date here, and then we can go over here on that date table, and we can choose our date. Now a left join, of course, you're going to have some of that selection. But we can see the selection matches 175 7 rows from the first table, which makes sense because we're about ready to cut it down because we cut those dates out of there. So now how would you do that? You can do an inner join, and now it's going to auto sort based upon what's chosen in that table. So if it's a dynamic date table and it auto sorts your financials fact table or your data right here, you've got that, and you can click OK, and it's going to auto sort that table, and it's going to give you the option to bring in those dates in. And then you could say, well, it came from the date table, date.1, so you can bring in that prefix. So you can see, and then you can have some date filters or things like that. But there's a lot you can do here, guys. I'm just showing you the bare minimum here of what's possible, but I wanted to show you joins because in Excel you're used to maybe XLOOKUP, VLOOKUPs. No, you don't need that. That's not safe because now you have a profile of your data. You know exactly what's coming through. I know these are my numbers here. The data profiler is extremely powerful. You can even click here and say, oh, I just want those, and it will actually go over and do that. So you're not going to make mistakes. The one thing I will say that's a kind of a risk with Power Queries, you need to probably choose entire data set typically here at the bottom. That'll just make sure you have all your stuff when you do these, and then you can filter by the entire data set, which is a little bit safer than the other thing, right? But this gives you a good profile of your data. You just click there real quick, make sure there's no nulls, blanks, or anything like that. And that data profiling really makes life a lot easier when it comes to Power Query and what you're trying to do, basically. So, very powerful tool, does a lot for you, and really just makes life a lot easier. So, leave a like, guys, if this video is helpful, but it's just like a simple way. I recommend you use this. Oh, yeah, we're going to click close and apply. That's going to bring that in. And then we could bring in the date table, but we're not going to do that. We're just going to bring our product, our sales price, bring that in. And then very quickly, we have a nice chart, or we have one of these. And just like that, we've built stuff coming from Power Query, very clean data versus just pulling that entire table and not having any transformations before it gets over. So it just gives you that ability to take it to the next level basically with your data.